Nobody after 2.5 years talk about interethnical relations, bad behaving. No, we are equal. If we reopen again interethnical relations in a negative matter, if there is a provocation in ethnical level, that will make a huge damage.
Prime Minister, many thanks for this interview.
Thank you very much.
Europe, thanks for starting your day with us. Hello and welcome to the programme.
Hello, you're watching Euronews Now, our top story.
Get the latest world news from a European perspective.
This is what protesters are denouncing.
With breaking news reported from the front line.
We have a mafia group leading this country right now.
Asking for more democracy and freedom of speech.
I was embedded into the organization group.
There are roughly 500 people on board Aquarius right now.
Hear from the voices at the heart of the debate.
We need to respect our values.
We've heard from the politicians, now it's your turn.
We are on our red sofa and we're hoping to speak to Italian people.
Find out what you think.
Right now is our last chance.
Get a different view on the stories that matter.
Welcome to theCUBE. This is our social media centre.
Let's get you up to date with our top stories.
Get all the international news you want at any time, anywhere on Euronews.com and the Euronews app.
Hello, this is Euronews Tonight. Our top stories. Bidding to break the deadlock, Spain's party leaders launched their campaigns as the country prepares for its fourth election in 4 years. The stage is set. The US House of Representatives votes to progress with the impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump. Greece debates a controversial new law to tackle its growing migration crisis as arrivals rise and conditions worsen.
And here in the Cube, it's the end of an era for this man, John Bercow, as he resides as the UK House of Commons Speaker for the final day. Hello and welcome to Euronews Tonight. It's very good to have you with us. Well, Spain's latest general election campaign is officially underway. It's the country's fourth national vote in just 4 years. Polls are predicting a surge for the far-right Vox party in the November the 10th ballot, boosted in part by the unrest over Catalan independence. Long live Spain, party leader Santiago Abascal told supporters at the campaign launch. Well, the acting Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez and his Socialist Party are still expecting a first-place finish, but with fewer parliamentary seats than in April when the Socialists won the most seats but had no working majority. Mr. Sanchez appealed to voters to stick with his party, while the Popular Party leader Pablo Casado said the Spanish people are better together.
We have no choice but to appeal to the Spaniards without any filters, straightforward, to speak to Spain, to speak to our compatriots and to tell them that the Popular Party is coming back stronger than ever to represent the Spanish people.
We do not want even one voter to remain at home or to be lost to other political parties. Whoever wants stability and to unblock the situation on November 10th, here is the Socialist Party.
We're hearing there from the acting Prime Minister, who called this poll in April that the Socialists will bring stability and unlock the Parliament. So what's going on here? Well, Spain traditionally passed power between two parties, the Socialist Party, led by Pedro Sanchez now, and the more conservative People's Party, led now by Pablo Casado. However, things started to change, the political system becoming much more crowded, as you can see, certainly with the emergence of parties now like Vox, the party on the far right, led by Santiago Abascal, a very strong message, many people calling this Spain's populist movement there. Then you've also got the Citizens Party led by Albert Rivera here, and then on the far left you've got the Podemos Party of Pablo Iglesias, a crowded field, meaning that Spain has been unable to form a majority government in April, and so they're back at the polls. So, as the leaders launch their campaigns, we're over here in the Cube, our social media news desk with Matthew Holroyd. Matthew, give us a sense then of how these parties are launching their messages on social.
Well, of course, Alex, a lot has been made very recently about political advertising and campaigning on social media, given that news that Twitter was banning all political adverts. But I think what is interesting is when you're looking at the Socialist Workers' Party, led by Pedro Sanchez, they have a very clear message on social media. Here using hashtags IORC, literally yes to now. A very simple message as they try to convince voters that Pedro Sanchez is indeed the man to try and lead Spain through this chaos. Now, we've also got, in contrast to that, the votes of the Vox party. Now, they have been very vocal in the way they are claiming that they are standing up for the Spanish flag, and they have been opposing to a number of the key social issues that have dominated Spanish headlines over the last 6 months, including the exhumation of the remains of the former dictator Franco, as well as saying that they believe the separatist movement in Catalonia should be quashed. But I think what is most interesting is that actually, when you're looking at political advertising and who is paying for the most, it is the Podemos party, led by Pablo Iglesias. They're showing videos like this. This one of their political adverts. They actually spent more than 9,000 euros in just one day. This one is targeting Pedro Sanchez and the Workers' Party in particular, saying that they are standing up for businessmen and not for the people. But of course, here they're targeting people like the young voters within Spain, and many of those have been telling us here at Euronews that they have election fatigue.
Matthew Holroyd in the Cube there. Well, it was supposed to be the day that the UK left the European Union. Boris Johnson supposed to lead that exit. Instead, the Prime Minister found himself back on the campaign trail, gearing up for a December general election, alongside Britain's other party leaders, as Neil O'Reilly reports.
Having given up on finding a Brexit solution in Parliament, Britain's politicians are back on the road. The election campaign hasn't officially begun yet, but party leaders are already taking their message to potential voters. Labour's Jeremy Corbyn opened with one of his most frequently used attacks against the government.
Boris Johnson's Conservatives, who think they're born to rule, will only ever look after the privileged few. They've slashed taxes for the richest and slashed vital services and support for everyone else. But real change is coming.
On the day Britain was meant to leave the EU, the Prime Minister sought to deflect blame for the delay onto his political opponents.
Requesting a DNA sample from one-tube.
Well, of course, I'm incredibly frustrated that we're not able to get Brexit done today, but let's be in no doubt what's happened. We had a fantastic deal on the table. The House of Commons voted it through, but then they voted again for delay.
And the battle buses have also been out, the anti-Brexit Liberal Democrats touring with a simple message. It's a long road ahead for all, with voters having the final say on December the 12th. Neil O'Reilly, Euronews.
Well, to Washington now, where the impeachment effort against Donald Trump has cleared its first hurdle in Congress. The House has voted in favour of a resolution that lays out the rules for the next phase of this inquiry, and it sets the stage for public hearings. NBC's Craig Boswell reports.
A divisive but historic day on Capitol Hill. On this vote, the yeas are 232, the nays are 196.
The House today voted to take the impeachment inquiry of President Trump public after weeks of depositions behind closed doors.
For just the fourth time in our nation's history, Congress is now investigating whether to impeach a president of the United States.
2 Democrats broke ranks, joining all of the House Republicans in voting against the resolution.
Democrats are trying to impeach the president because they are scared they cannot defeat him at the ballot box.
Formalizing the process establishes ground rules for open hearings and how witnesses will be treated at the discretion of House Intelligence Committee Chair Adam Schiff.
Both parties will have an equal opportunity to question any witnesses that are called.
But if the chair says they don't like the witnesses don't come forward.
President Trump reacting to the vote on a British radio show.
I didn't have one negative Republican vote, which is a very unusual thing.
The investigation is focused on the president's July 25th call with the Ukrainian president and questions of whether Mr. Trump abused his power to pressure Ukraine to investigate political rivals. Tim Morrison today becomes the second official on that phone call to testify, appearing against the president's wishes and a day after stepping down from his White House post. Democratic investigators also want to question former National Security Advisor John Bolton, who reportedly clashed with Trump insiders on Ukraine. Craig Boswell, NBC News, Washington.
The Greek Parliament is debating a new law that could make it easier to deport migrants. Greece has been struggling to cope with its biggest influx of refugees since 2015. The government is saying this new law will shorten the asylum process and help to deport people whose applications have been rejected. But rights groups are warning it could weaken the protection of asylum seekers. Well, staying with migration, and the advisory body to the EU's highest court has found that Hungary, Poland and the Czech Republic broke the law by refusing to take in asylum seekers in 2015. The Advocate General has insisted that countries must share the refugee burden, as Jack Parrock reports.
It's important to note that this is just an opinion by the Advocate General. This is not a full verdict from the European Court of Justice. But Eleanor Sharpston has advised the judges that they should find that Hungary, the Czech Republic and Poland did not fulfill their obligations under EU law because they didn't accept any of the migrants and asylum seekers that the European Commission insisted that they should under this relocation system that was put into place at the height of the migration crisis. The plan was to redistribute 160,000 people that were arriving at that time mainly on the Greek islands among EU member states, but those countries said that in their national security interests that they weren't willing to do so, and they didn't accept any apart from the Czech Republic, who took a total of 12 people. Now, Judith Varga, the Hungarian Justice Minister, she's responded to this decision by the Advocate General, saying that it's a double standard and that because the system essentially failed, they only managed to relocate around 30,000 people before the EU Commission basically aborted it in September 2017, that the other member states should be punished as well. She feels that they're being unfairly targeted, those countries. And as I say, because it was aborted, now really what the EU is focusing on is dealing with the relocation of people that are arriving in boats that have potentially, and we've seen them, have been stranded out at sea when governments, the previous government in Italy for instance, refused to let them dock at port. That is now the political issue on everyone's minds. But the EU ECJ is continuing with the legal process in this case, which the European Commission took out against Poland, the Czech Republic and Hungary, and they could still face sanctions, probably minor ones in this case, because they didn't abide by the relocation system.
The outgoing European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker has been forced to put his plans for retirement on hold, as his successor is not yet ready to take office. He's likely to stay into December to give Ursula von der Leyen time to get her team of commissioners together, as Maeve McMahon reports.
It was the day that Jean-Claude Juncker had been looking forward to for ages. His last day as EU Commission President. But as often in life, things can play out differently. The man who's adored by his friends and his staff and respected by his political foes now becomes a caretaker Commission President for at least a month, because his elected successor, Ursula von der Leyen, doesn't have her team together. That means big decisions are left in limbo.
The Brexit gap in the budget, roughly 12 billion euro in the first year and 14 billion in the last, should be covered 50-50 by savings and by slightly higher contributions from member states.
According to our Pope, the hell is still empty, you know, and it means that a lot of space as well.
Beyond the jokes, though, it will of course be Brexit that leaves a dark cloud over the Juncker Commission.
Don't go to hell.
Stay with us on Euronews tonight. Coming up, we have the debate as New York bans foie gras. That's in just a moment's time.
This week on Euronews.
Join us for Business Line, the monthly series keeping you up to date with stories shaping business and investments across the globe. From world leaders to established industry players to cutting-edge startups and disruptive innovators, meet the people behind the business trends. Stay on top of the ever-shifting business and investment landscape. That's Business Line on Euronews and Euronews.com.
अल्लाह जी रज़ाई हुई जापान खुदा मुंहिंजे अंदाज़े में त पूरो सड़ी हो एक कमरा ॾिसो खिड़की खां ही ॾिसी सघो था तव्हां जापान ही ॾिसो मोबाइल
Welcome back to Euronews Tonight. Well, it is one of the fine dining capitals of the world. But New York restaurants are about to have one less item on their menus. The city passing a bill banning the sale of foie gras. Made from the enlarged livers of force-fed ducks and geese, animal rights activists say the process is painful and cruel. Foie gras producers say they'll sue to block this bill, which is set to come into effect in 3 years. Producers in California tried to overturn a 2012 ban, but were defeated when the Supreme Court refused to hear their appeal. Well, there are very great differing opinions on this ban in New York, and to get both sides of the issue, I spoke to Matthew Dominguez, a policy advisor.
Over 100 restaurants, 42 council members, after hearing both sides of the story, voted in favor of this. And I will tell you, my heart goes out to immigrants and folks that have to make a living. But at the end of the day, animal cruelty is something that we do not accept in our society, and it's something that we do not want to have on the menus here in New York City. And this bill is about animal cruelty. And what we encourage people to do in the foie gras industry is transition their business. I know that LaBelle Farms in Hudson Valley, you guys serve many other products than foie gras. Move away from this barbaric, this delicacy that is disgusting and people simply do not want. Go into other forms of agriculture that people are willing to accept. I didn't ban foie gras in New York City. The New York City Council did after hearing from thousands and thousands and thousands of people who were in support of it.
Sergio, finally then, will you be making a transition, or will you be joining the fight against this ban?
First of all, the poll is deceptive from the beginning. It goes off saying that the disease is liver. And we have documentation where they tried to petition the USDA to declare foie gras a diseased product, and they haven't, because the USDA is at our plant every single day, stamping our product as a wholesome product. So we're not diseased, so your poll makes no sense, because you start with a premise that is defective. Second, we do try everything. We do everything possible to step out into other realms. First of all, other things. I grow quail. The quail are not unique. I cannot petition people with quail. This is such a unique product because there's only 3 in the United States, 2 in New York, that I can actually petition somebody under this farm. So we're always working, and if you came and you saw, we don't have that metal tube that they portrayed. We have a small rubber tube that we use. We do so many things different. We're not in cages. We're in open pens. I wish that you, or the council at least, after passing this legislation, if they would have I would have picked them up. I would have picked them up and brought them to our farm.
Kiev says it's be pulling more weapons out of the Donbas region in a bid to smooth the path towards peace talks with Russia. Hermione G reports.
After years of stalemate and mutual recrimination, some momentum in the peace process in eastern Ukraine. Following a meeting with NATO, President Zelensky announcing a troop withdrawal from the key battleground of the Donbas region. A confidence-building step ahead of possible new talks involving Russia, France and Germany.
If the situation is secure in Petrivska for the week, as you know, there must be 7 days of ceasefire. Then we will have to start withdrawal in Petrivska on November 4th, if I'm not mistaken. That is why I see no doubt that the meeting will take place if all parties are committed to do it.
NATO has pushed for compromise from Ukraine, but remains a staunch supporter.
Russia must end its support for the militants in eastern Ukraine and withdraw its forces and equipment from Ukrainian territory. President Zelensky, I commend you for your strong commitment to a peaceful resolution of the conflict.
Ukraine's moves have been cautiously welcomed by the Kremlin. But Foreign Secretary Sergei Lavrov said Russia wants to see more.
It has just been announced that the contact group has reached an agreement on the withdrawal of forces from the Petrovskoy pilot region on November 4th. So we're moving in the right direction, but first of all, we must see these actions through to the end. And secondly, I would like to remind you that these are only 3 small settlements. We would like to see the withdrawal of armed forces along all the contact lines.
Despite the apparent breakthrough in the Donbas conflict, tensions remain high over Ukraine's growing relations with the West. NATO and Kiev have announced further joint military operations and intensification of naval cooperation in the Black Sea. Hermione G, Euronews.
Let's take a look now at some of the other top stories today. And Iraq's Prime Minister Adel Abdul Mahdi has agreed to step down if Parliament's main blocs can agree on a replacement. The announcement follows weeks of anti-government protests that have killed at least 250 people. The president has vowed to hold early parliamentary elections once a new law is passed. Demonstrators blame the political parties in power for the levels of unemployment, government corruption and a lack of basic services. The Islamic State group has confirmed the death of its leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and named his successor. In an audio tape posted online, the terror group admitted he was killed in a weekend raid by US forces in northwestern Syria. The statement named its new leader and vowed revenge on the killing on the US. Well, only a handful of people have climbed all of the world's 14 highest peaks. It was a feat that took years to achieve. Until now, because a Nepali mountaineer and ex-British soldier has shattered the record by a margin of 7 whole years. As NBC News' Keir Simmons reports.
Battling high altitude, below zero temperatures, the most challenging mountains in the world, and in the last 24 hours, a hero's welcome. Nirmal Purja, known as Nims, just arriving in Kathmandu after setting a world record many didn't think possible.
Nobody believed that this could be done.
Here's why. Vertical climbs, unpredictable weather, and a grueling timetable, day and night. It took the previous record holder nearly 8 years to summit these peaks in succession. Nims just took on the 14 mountains in 6 months, 6 days.
Now 3 more to go. This is project possible.
At the highest, Everest, he even paused to take this picture of a human traffic jam 29,000 feet up, the image going viral. At the base camp of one mountain, he had to double back and climb another to meet a visa deadline.
I have to enter the border by tomorrow.
Nims trained with mountain rocks, giving up his job in the British Special Forces, including his pension, even selling his house, turning the seemingly impossible, like crossing this deep crevice, into an adventure he called Project Possible. His positivity as impressive as the 14 peaks.
No problem.
Mastering terrain and time on top of the world.
He even beat his own expectations. He had aimed to do it in 7 months. He did it in 6 months. Keir Simmons, NBC News, London.
That is quite one feat indeed. Well, stay with us. Coming up on Euronews tonight. Calling time on the career of the man who tried to keep order in the UK Parliament. We'll have more on John Bercow after the break.
Saturday on Euronews.
Want to create and run your own business? On Business Planet we meet the entrepreneurs and firms turning their dreams into reality. From finance and funding to new markets and clients. All the top tips and tricks to take your business to the next level. The secrets to success for your small business. That's in Business Planet on Euronews and Euronews.com.
Welcome back to Euronews Tonight. Well, a face and a voice recognised around the world. He, of course, being one of the most controversial parliamentary speakers in modern British history. John Bercow standing down after 10 years in the iconic chair. Matthew Holroyd in theCUBE has the story.
One of the most recognisable figures in British politics, and that era has come to an end. The House of Commons confirming today that John Bercow will reside as the UK House of Commons Speaker for the final time before he formally resigns as an MP on Monday. Now, he's been one of the most recognisable figures in his role of presiding over debates held in the House of Commons and determining when MPs are allowed to speak. It is a role that he has held since 2009 and alongside a record 4 serving British Prime Ministers. Now, you've heard in the House of Commons this week the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson praising him for being a great servant, while the leader of the opposition, Jeremy Corbyn, saying he had stood up for Parliament when it needed to be stood up for. And indeed, this sort of praise has been echoed on social media. Andrew Adonis, the Labour MP, saying that he is up there with the greatest House speakers ever seen in British history. But it is also worth saying that John Bercow was a divisive figure. He was criticised over the way he handled Brexit, with many people saying he was biased by not allowing Theresa May a third vote of her withdrawal agreement. And today, a lot of Brexit MEPs have been coming out and saying that they think actually they should be celebrating Brexit Day, as Lance Foreman here calls it. Other people, including Rupert Lowe, going further to say that John Bercow personifies what a disgrace the UK Parliament has become. But when it comes to the international audience, he has undoubtedly been a viral figure, with clips of him being shared across international news outlets and, of course, on social media, with some people, for example, picking out on his dress sense. You can see here Scott Primer saying it's hard to get into the mind of the man who, knowing the world is watching, thinks this is definitely the tie to wear. But when it comes to John Bercow, it will undoubtedly be his booming voice for which he is most remembered.